Cenk started off very rightly talking about how Republicans and Donald Trump seem unhinged by perpetuating these ideas that dogs and cats are being eaten and that women are having post-birth abortions. And the first thing that Michael does when he comes on here is perpetuate these exact claims. Look, you guys can do this
and
until you're blue in the face.
With evidence.
I don't know how to convey the extent to which when Republicans say this kind of stuff, it does not resonate with normal people. And you seem crazy. And Donald Trump went out there on stage, got laughed at by the entire nation. And then, Michael, you come on here and you do the exact same thing. So please, triple down on this. Quadruple down on this. Make this election a referendum on this bogus notion that women are executing their babies after they're born. I beg of you, we'll see how that works out.
Okay. All right, this is where things completely went off the rails for Trump's defenders. Because look, if your candidate walks onto a debate stage and delivers a performance that gets mocked across the entire country, the normal response would be damage control. Maybe lay low for a few days, maybe admit it wasn't great and move on. But that's not what happened here. Instead, the entire right-wing media machine decided to double down on every bizarre thing Trump said. And honestly, that tells you everything you need to know. Because this wasn't just about Trump having a bad debate anymore, it exposed how deeply disconnected the entire MAGA ecosystem has become from reality itself. Before we dive deeper into this story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Seriously, think about this for a second. If my candidate went on national television and started ranting about migrants eating people's pets, I would not jump online the next morning trying to defend it. I would pretend that debate never happened. But figures like Michael Knowles and Tomi Lahren went out there and repeated the exact same talking points like it was perfectly normal behavior. And that's the problem. No, normal voters are not sitting at home thinking about imaginary post-birth executions or pet-eating conspiracies. Normal people hear this stuff and think, what are these people even talking about? It comes across as extreme, chaotic, and honestly kind of disturbing. And Trump keeps doing this over and over again. One minute he's praising strongmen and dictators, the next he's spiraling over crowd sizes like it's the most important issue facing the country. Then when he's asked about actual policy, all voters get is vague slogans and rambling non-answers. But somehow his media allies always rush in to clean it up afterward. That's what made this panel so revealing. Nobody forced these commentators to defend Trump. They chose to do it voluntarily. They heard the debate performance, saw the backlash, and still decided the smartest strategy was to repeat the same claims even louder. And honestly, Democrats should probably just let them keep talking. Because every time these clips go viral, independent voters get reminded why so many people are exhausted by this brand of politics. It might fire up the most hardcore corners of Trump's base, but outside that bubble, it makes the movement look completely unhinged. And with the election right around the corner, Republicans are acting like this is somehow a winning strategy. If that's the message they want attached to their campaign heading into November, nobody's stopping them.
I think what's so interesting is that Tommy brought up this idea that the onus was on Kamala Harris to present some vision for the future. And if we think about this election, as far as Trump is concerned, is entirely predicated on seeking vengeance for what happened on January 6th. He wants to release the January 6th insurrectionists who've been prosecuted, who've been indicted and charged. He is solely focused on getting retribution for those people, for what happened on January 6th. He was asked in this debate whether he would sign a nationwide abortion ban multiple times, refused to answer it. You want to talk about a vision for the future? He won't talk about what he's offering for the future. He's solely focused on relitigating events of the past.
Oh yes, apparently Republicans are suddenly very concerned about having a vision for the future. That's the new talking point now. And honestly, hearing that from the MAGA movement of all people is almost impossible to say with a straight face. Because let's be real here. This is the same movement still obsessing over the 2020 election nearly every single day. The same movement still relitigating January 6th. The same movement openly talking about pardoning people involved in the Capitol riot while treating Trump like some untouchable political martyr. But now we're supposed to believe these are the people focused on moving America forward. Give me a break. The irony here is unbelievable because Kamala Harris actually has been talking about policy proposals and future plans. Whether people agree with her or not is another conversation entirely, but at least there's an actual agenda being presented to voters. She's talked about protecting abortion rights through federal legislation. She's talked about border legislation that Republicans themselves previously supported before Trump reportedly pressured lawmakers to kill it because he wanted the issue for campaign purposes. She's talked about economic proposals aimed at helping small businesses and first-time homebuyers. That's called presenting policy. Meanwhile, every time Trump gets asked a direct question about actual governing, the conversation immediately turns into complete chaos. The clearest example might honestly be that child care answer, if you can even call it an answer. The question was simple: what's your plan? And somehow the response turned into this wandering maze of tariffs, random economic buzzwords, vague promises about trillions of dollars, and sentence fragments stitched together like nobody in the room knew where the conversation was even going anymore. It sounded less like a presidential policy proposal and more like somebody trying to finish an essay 5 minutes before the deadline. And yet somehow, Republicans still go on television pretending Trump is the serious policy candidate in this race. That's what makes these panels so frustrating to watch. There's this constant attempt to rewrite reality in real time, even when voters can literally see and hear the footage themselves. Because at some point, people stop asking whether Trump has a plan and start asking whether anyone around him is willing to admit he doesn't.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country. Because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you. Very good question. Thank you.
Honestly, if somebody can fully explain what Trump was even trying to say there, I'm genuinely willing to listen. Because that answer sounded like a blender full of random talking points thrown together in real time. The question was about childcare. A basic policy question, something every presidential candidate should be prepared to answer clearly. And instead, voters got this endless ramble about tariffs, trillions of dollars, foreign nations, America first, and vague promises that everything would somehow magically work itself out. At no point did it actually sound like there was a concrete plan, and that's the part Republicans keep hoping people ignore. They spend so much time attacking Democrats for supposedly lacking vision, lacking leadership, lacking policy clarity. Meanwhile, their own candidate struggles to stay focused long enough to explain one straightforward issue without drifting into a completely unrelated tangent. That debate answer became the perfect example of the larger problem surrounding Trump's campaign right now. There's always a slogan. There's always a dramatic catchphrase. But once you look past the performance and ask for specifics, the substance just disappears. And yet right-wing commentators still go on these panels acting shocked that voters are questioning Trump's fitness or preparedness. At some point, you can't keep blaming the media, the moderators, the advisors, or Democrats for reactions that Trump himself creates every time he opens his mouth. Because voters watched that answer for themselves. Nobody edited it. Nobody manipulated it. People heard it in real time and came away asking the exact same question. What exactly was he even talking about?
You know, I've sat here listening to Dan, to Michael. I believe Tommy made the same point about how Donald Trump has to fire his advisors. When he comes back for the second debate, he can't listen to these people who steered him wrong. Does anybody actually think that Donald Trump took the advice of any of his advisors? Does he think that he's disciplined enough to take any advice and not just revert back to exactly who he is, exactly the guy that we've seen for the past nearly a decade? The second he's poked, he is so easy to bait that you could dangle a cookie in front of a 4-year-old and they would have more discipline than Donald Trump. This notion that his advisors are responsible for what happened on that debate stage is a joke. It's also, you know, you look at someone like Ronna McDaniel, for example. She was fired as RNC chair because Donald Trump always needs to blame somebody for his own shortcomings. The reason that Republicans lost was not because of Ronna McDaniel or the RNC. It's because people aligned with Donald Trump, aligned with the America First agenda, didn't present themselves well to the American people because they're lunatics and they lost. But Donald Trump can't take responsibility for anything. And so somebody else had to get thrown under the bus as the result of that. What we saw on that debate stage was not the fault of his advisors, was not the fault of anybody on his team, was not the fault.
Here's the pattern everybody keeps seeing over and over again with Trump. Nothing is ever his fault. Ever. If the campaign struggles, blame the advisors. If Republicans lose elections, blame the RNC. If a debate goes badly, suddenly it's because somebody prepared him poorly. There's always another excuse waiting around the corner. But at some point, people have to stop pretending Donald Trump is some helpless bystander in his own campaigns. This is the same guy we've watched for nearly a decade now. Everybody knows exactly how he reacts under pressure. The second he feels attacked or embarrassed, the entire conversation goes off the rails. He stops focusing, starts rambling, lashes out emotionally, and turns every moment into personal grievance therapy live on television. And somehow we're now supposed to believe advisors caused that? Please. Donald Trump doesn't suddenly become a disciplined statesman because a consultant gave him a debate memo 5 minutes backstage. What viewers saw during that debate was the same Trump Americans have been watching for years. Impulsive, reactive, easily baited, and completely unable to stay focused when his ego takes a hit. But the right-wing media ecosystem can never admit that reality out loud. That's why after every public meltdown, there's this immediate scramble to protect him. Somebody else must be responsible. Somebody else must take the blame. Because admitting Trump failed on his own would completely shatter the image they've spent years building around him. And honestly, the irony is incredible. Republicans spend so much time attacking special treatment and participation trophies, yet nobody in modern politics gets protected more than Donald Trump. Any other politician delivers performances like this repeatedly, and their own party starts distancing itself immediately. With Trump, it's the opposite. The excuses actually become more aggressive after every disaster. That's what made that Piers Morgan panel so revealing. Nobody forced these commentators to defend Trump. Nobody forced them to go on television and clean up after another chaotic debate performance. They willingly chose to do it because defending Trump at all costs has basically become a requirement inside conservative media. Even when the clips themselves are impossible to defend, because at the end of the day, millions of Americans watched Trump go on national television and say things that left viewers genuinely stunned. And instead of helping calm the situation down, his allies somehow managed to make the entire thing look even worse.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
So honestly, If people like Michael Knowles, Tomi Lahren, and Piers Morgan want to keep bending themselves into knots trying to defend that debate performance, nobody's going to stop them. Because every time they go on television and try to explain away another Trump meltdown, they only make the situation more obvious to everyone watching. Instead of distancing themselves from the chaos, they amplify it. Instead of calming concerns, they reinforce them. And that's really been the story of modern conservative media for years now. No matter what happens, no matter how bizarre the moment becomes, there's always a group of commentators ready to insist voters didn't see what they clearly just saw with their own eyes. And eventually that starts creating a massive disconnect between the media bubble and ordinary people outside of it. Because average voters are not sitting around memorizing partisan talking points all day. They're watching these moments and reacting instinctively. They know when something feels off. They know when an answer sounds incoherent. And they definitely know when politicians and pundits are trying way too hard to spin obvious damage control. That's why this entire debate fallout mattered so much. It wasn't just about one bad performance, it was about the reaction afterward, the refusal to acknowledge reality, the desperate attempt to protect Trump at all costs, no matter how embarrassing things become. And heading into a major election, that strategy could end up doing far more damage than Republicans realize. Anyway, if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.